Hello everybody, Adam Cleary from FourFourTwo here, and can you imagine if your job was to come in on a Monday morning and try and make sense of that? Nice little life for me. Anyway, Chelsea 4, Manchester City 4, and probably the most interesting game we've seen in the Premier League this season, not because it had loads and loads of goals and it was dead exciting and it was rich in narrative, but because Chelsea managed to do something to Manchester City that never ever almost happens. They stopped Manchester City from being Manchester City, and in doing so proved that they're not just a great team themselves, but that other teams might be able to do that too. Okay, so to show you how they stopped Man City from being Man City, I must first show you what Man City are. And this was the starting lineup as it appeared everywhere, and a very good lesson as to why you never really pay attention anymore, especially in Pep Guardiola teams, to what the lineup actually says. Because you got your back four here, you've got a double pivot in the middle of Bernardo Silva and Rodri, with sort of three strung along the middle, and Erling Haaland there, but it looked nothing like that. I mean, case in point, these are the average positions for the starting 11 across the course of the game, and the first thing that'll jump out at you is that's not a double pivot. That's just Rodri. What City have actually been trying to do this season is pretty much just play with a flat 4 right behind Erling Haaland. So kind of like a really aggressive 4-1-4-1. This allows Alvarez to kind of pretend he's a centre forward and get around Haaland. It allows Silva to get on the ball where he wants to be on the ball. And more importantly, because they use Jeremy Doku all the time, it allows him to be nice and high and stretch teams so he can run at defenders and do this whole dribbling thing that Man City are trying out. And it also means if they want to do that patented box midfield of theirs, Rodri can shuffle over and Kyle Walker can come across, or he can just sort of mill around here and then Akanji can push forward. It gives them options for building up the way they normally like to build up. But the problem this creates, which hasn't really been exploited this season, is because John Stones not being here means it's harder for them to get back into their shape whenever the ball is turned over, whenever it is in transition. Because as well as either Walker or Akanji having to get into the back four straight away, you've still got to get Silva all the way back from that attacking 8 position. Alvarez has to kind of float back into the middle somewhere. There's a few things have to happen for them to get nicely set to defend. Which is why, and Rodri even touched on this in the post-match interview, they don't like the game to be transitional. They don't like there to be lots of turnovers. They don't want it to be end-to-end because they know that's kind of a little bit of a weakness for them. And Chelsea looked at this and said, oh, you don't want a transitional game, do you not? Well, here's all the transitions in the world. Pretty much their entire game plan from an attacking sense was to target the exact moment that City would leave Rodri isolated. So when the ball's turned over, Akanji, if he stepped forward, or Walker, if he's come across, they've got to move back, which leaves him on his own. And there is always a bit of time before Bernardo Silva or whoever else comes back to make this shape up again. So in this exact moment here, when it's just Rodri, they flooded that area. Chelsea were also supposed to have a 4-2-3-1 that was not actually anything like a 4-2-3-1, but if we put the average positions over again, you can see Enzo Fernandez was pretty much as deep as Caicedo the whole game. He did sit in that area. He did make it hard for City to play through. But look at this bit here. You could throw a tea towel over Sterling, Jackson, Gallagher, and Palmer. Now, there's two things you have to understand about average positions, which kind of explains what Chelsea are doing here. Like, first of all, if you are just in that position a lot, that'll be your average position. But also if you're interchanging positions a lot, you will kind of come out somewhere in the middle of those two. And if you just look at where Palmer and Gallagher are on this, that does kind of explain that. Because normally, Palmer was supposed to be on the right-hand side, Gallagher was supposed to be the 10, but more often than not, we saw Gallagher go out to the right-hand side when Chelsea were trying to press, and Palmer would then come into the middle for the space he'd left. And also you can see here that Jackson is technically deeper than Sterling. That's because he was pushing up against Man City's backline, but he was also dropping off to receive the ball, try and pull a defender with him, and that was creating space for all three of them to try and target. Sterling is the furthest forward because Sterling had the most fun with it. That was an absolute all-timer of a display from him. And it was this combination of just constantly rotating position, constantly targeting Rodri when he was exposed that just caused Man City all kinds of problems. One thing they never ever tend to do is get drawn towards the wrong man and leave space, and yet Chelsea managed to do that 3 or 4 times and make great chances out of it. For the first goal, you can see here that Diaz is the one who's tried to step forward into the midfield to be alongside Rodri, and when Palmer gets on the ball, there is space in behind him for him to take him on and try and go at him, but he doesn't do that. Instead, he goes out to the right-hand side, seeing if he can pull Diaz even further away from the centre to leave room for Reece James to run in. Now, given that Man City are defending the edge of their own box here, have you ever seen them as disorganised as this? You could park a bus, you could park 10 buses in the space they've left here. And yet it does require quite a fortunate bounce off Guardiola's foot. He has a bit of a mare with that one, but it's still a problem that comes about from Chelsea moving Man City's players around and creating space. The best example, mind, and apologies to Malo Gusto for showing this, Sterling nicks the ball off Rodri in sort of the final third, and City do what they don't normally do. They panic. There's two players there. They have a man each, and yet they both go to Sterling. He draws them into the middle of the pitch. He creates that room for Gusto. He puts him in, and well, he should score. He 1,000,000% should score. You would score. I would score that. We would both score that, I think. But the added time equaliser, or certainly the play that built up to the penalty that was the added time equaliser, is an absolute Mauricio Pochettino masterclass on how to stretch a team and make space. This is where Raheem Sterling picks up the ball, and it is 5v5. They do not have a man over. They have not magically created some amazing opportunity. They just have 5 players perfectly positioned to break down a 4 with a holding midfielder. Jackson is perfectly in between the two City centre-backs, so neither of them can be totally sure whose man that is. Sterling and Brozier, the two 10s in this scenario, have both dropped away from that back line, but done it with a lot of space between them, so Rodri in the middle here, again, can't really pick a player to go to. And that would normally just mean that the full-backs then come in to sort of congest the space, so those 3 players can't do anything, but the 2 wide players for Chelsea are both practically on the touchline. They cannot afford to come in any more narrow than they already are, because they'll leave them completely free with, let's face it, plenty of space in behind should they want to run in. Realising that Akanji has zoned in on Sterling, Jackson makes a brilliant run in behind him, which takes Diaz away and leaves all this space for Brozier. Now, it's a great ball from Sterling and a great ball from Brozier, because it has to be, because we're still talking about a very small amount of space here, but it again panics Manchester City. It panics Diaz. He rushes in, he desperately tries to get a block in, and he gives away the penalty in the process. Now, the thing is, if you're a Man City fan, you might have watched that game and feel so many of these goals were self-inflicted. Like, you could have done so much better on lots of them. But you've got to remember, you're Manchester City. There's a reason you don't see this happen very often, and you have to credit Chelsea for consistently creating the situations that forced you into these bad decisions. And it wasn't just when they were attacking either, by the way. How they pressed Manchester City was really good as well. Like, we'll just overlay City's idealised build-up shape here, the 3, and then they've got the box. They just completely sat off the 3 centre-backs. They didn't pay any attention to them really whatsoever. Jackson would chase them down and harry them now and then, but he was quite happy to congest the middle of the pitch to outnumber their outnumbering tactic. And this is an incredibly risky thing to do, by the way, because down that left-hand side, City had both Guardiola and Doku, 2 players who would love that amount of space to run into. 2 players City have specifically brought in this season because they do something City don't normally do, and that's carry the ball, that's beat players, that's run into that kind of space. They could have been completely exposed down that side. But Cole Palmer, right, for all people are praising his attacking contribution because City couldn't live with him and he scored that penalty, and that feels like it's the story. His dogged determination when they were defending to cover this area, yes, but also constantly get across to protect Reece James was, I think, his best contribution to that match. Like, yes, when Chelsea were building up, you would rotate with Gallagher, and Gallagher would go out there and Palmer would get into the middle. But when they were defending, that was his side of the pitch, and he never really left it exposed. Sterling as well was absolutely brilliant. I've never seen Kyle Walker have that much trouble with a winger. Nicholas Jackson, I've been saying since the start of the season, was going to be an absolute baller, so nice to see him finally getting his flowers. Enzo Fernandez, lo and behold, when he's not required to do every single thing for Chelsea, actually looks like an amazing player. You could pull out great performances from this Chelsea team pretty much across the pitch. But for all we're talking about the game plan here and how well disciplined they were and how well organised they were and how well drilled they were, this was a structure designed to remove structure. It was all designed to make for a chaotic game, and Man City could not live with Chelsea in a chaotic game. Oh, so that's great, Adam. Is that just how you beat Man City now? Well, no, because they didn't beat them. It was a really chaotic game and Chelsea were much the better side, but they had to score 4 goals just to get a draw. And yes, you could argue the first penalty was absolutely nonsense, and then the winner was a deflected goal off Thiago Silva, but this is still Man City here. There isn't just a magic button you can press or a magic system you can play and it'll beat them. If you make the game chaotic, they'll score a lot of goals too, but you can at least, as Chelsea proved, really get at them. And then, who knows, you get them on a day where maybe they're a little bit wasteful in front of goal and you might have yourself a little victory. Certainly fun to watch either way. Anyway, there were like a million things I could have talked about in this game. Like Raheem Sterling looks back to being Liverpool's Raheem Sterling, which is very interesting. Conor Gallagher, he should probably be starting in England's midfield if they want to play a 3. Sanchez is both tragedy and comedy for the audiences of Stamford Bridge. And Ruben Diaz, did somebody Space Jam him? Have his powers gone? Also, why is that light gone up? That's it though, because editing takes time. If you have enjoyed this though, please do consider subscribing to us here on 442. We love new subscribers. It's the one metric that does really, really help us out. So all you gotta do is find that little button, click it. We'll be talking about all the fun stuff coming up over the next couple of weeks. Sorry, what? There's another international break. Oh well, you can get me on Twitter, X, Instagram, everything at Adam Cleary, CLEOY. The entire 442 social spectrum, it's in the corner of the video. I don't know why I bother pointing it out. But until next time, I've been Adam Cleary. This has been 442. That was the best game I've seen in ages. And I'll see you soon. Bye.